So I just want to say thank you very much, Tariq, for agreeing to meet with me as part of the second series of Inclusion Dialogue. I'm really interested in hearing about your work and your views on inclusive education and how you came to have those views. What I would like to start off with is just to find out how you ended up working in this field of special and inclusive education and what brought you here.
Okay, thank you. Actually, when I completed my high school, I and tried to be enrolled in undergrad programs, I was looking for something new in our country context. So during that period, our Institute of Education and Research at the University of Dhaka in Bangladesh, they started a new program on Bachelor of Education special ed program, and this was the first 4-year program, bachelor program in Bangladesh. Previously, there were some shorter length programs in Bangladesh, like B.Ed and BSed degrees for 2 years, but this was the first time 4-year bachelor degree was offered through a university. So that made me interested to work in that area, because this is the new area in Bangladesh and new degree will be offered. So I have many things to do in that area for my country and also for the region. So that was the motivational point for me in the initial stage to be enrolled in this area. And later on, when I went through my academic degrees and other experiences, I got involved in many national initiatives on disability inclusion and inclusive education. And then later on, I gained my another master's degree from Australian University, and then completed a PhD at Monash University in Melbourne, Australia. And through those academic experiences, I went through a number of professional linkages. And after coming back to Bangladesh, I initiated one regional network, which is known as Asian Center for Inclusive Education, and also started a journal, an international journal, which is named Asian Journal of Inclusive Education. So through those initiatives, I am now connected with many parts of the world and working in Bangladesh as well as in this region.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I might today draw on both your kind of national Bangladesh perspective, but also then your kind of global input. Could you take us through, for people who don't know about the education system in Bangladesh, what is the system of special or inclusive education that exists, and how has it evolved over time?
Okay, like many other developing countries, Bangladesh is just in the middle of the journey of special education program in Bangladesh, because we did not have a strong special ed program or initiative in Bangladesh for long, and this is the 50 years in independence of Bangladesh. And our special ed journey started from the very beginning of our country's initiation, but it was not institutionalized that much. And mostly the special ed programs are city-based, and only 1 to 2% of total children with disabilities get access to special ed programs.
Okay.
But as this is not very much strongly institutionalized, our government has had the opportunity to start inclusive education very smoothly, because in many parts of the world, there were some resistance from special ed people when inclusion started, and still there are some dilemmas and conflicts due to not having the appropriate understanding of those practices. So Bangladesh did not have that much conflicting issues when we started inclusion program, especially after signing the Salamanca Declaration in 1994. But the journey started with the support of disability rights movement people in Bangladesh. and especially the non-government organizations, they initiated different programs for inclusive education initially. And first 6 to 10 years, actually, we had some malpractice and also had some misconceptions in the government and also among the practitioners, because we designed many segregated programs. We thought inserting just special ed programs into the mainstream would be inclusion, or we thought different target group oriented specific programs will make people inclusive in the society. But later on, like many other countries' experiences, we also gone through a number of changes, and now the inclusion movement is very much mainstreamed in our country. So this is the initial starting of our special ed and inclusion journey.
And can I follow up on that? And in Ireland, there's often a criticism that there's a gap between perhaps our commitments at a policy level and the practice then in classrooms on the ground. Does that ring true for Bangladesh as well?
Yeah, definitely. Almost all over the world, I think there are some gaps in those areas, especially if I can pinpoint the experiences in Bangladesh. We can find out that we have very sound policy documents in Bangladesh, because those documents are developed by a group of people who are very much well aware of the concepts and practices of those things. Especially they have global orientation on those. And also development partners in our country, they had a role in developing those policy initiatives. So that's why the policy documents are very sound in our country. But when it is translated into strategies, and then it went to the implementation, we can find out that there are many types of and variations of inclusive education programs in Bangladesh, especially from the perspective of understanding, from the perspective of implementation in both areas. Yeah.
And is the voice of the children in these situations is often quite silent, but is there parental input into how their children should be educated? Is there much kind of action at the kind of family or parental level?
Not much yet, because normally in our country, it is very much centrally controlled system of education. So that's why parents do not have that much access to educational initiatives, and they actually don't have that much awareness about their right to be involved in education. So that is one reason why parents are not that much engaged in school initiatives, though our policies and also international declarations are saying that it has to be designed by engaging parents, and also student voice has to be ensured. But in practice, it is not yet that much visible, not from the perspective of children who don't have disabilities and also children who have disabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the themes that I wanted to look at in this season, Tariq, was around, I suppose, how we compare the kind of global north and south. Have you got any views based on your experience working around the globe about those comparisons that are often commonly drawn?
If I explain it from the perspective of definition, I think it is quite similar in both contexts, from north and south, because the thing is to focus on human rights, human diversity. So from the philosophical understanding or definitional perspective, it is quite similar. But when you come into the point of implementation, things are very much different, because there are some contextual belief system, also some contextual challenges that contribute into those implementation issues, like gender is one issue that is very different from North and South, and also the population size, that is also important, because in many southern countries, especially who are developing countries, their population density is very high and class size is very big. So inclusion takes place in a different manner in those countries than other northern countries.
And can I just ask you about your role in your journal? And I suppose what I'm trying to get at here is, like, what are the key tensions or issues being raised by contributors to your journal at the moment? As in, where's the debate at?
Mostly the challenges related to implementing inclusive education in developing countries, like especially in Asian countries. Those are the main issues that come into the focus of those articles that are being submitted in our journal. So that is the mostly discussed area of the journal.
And what are the issues? So you mentioned their class size. I think from something you said earlier on, it's about geography and access to programs, right? Would that be fair? What else are the barriers to implementation?
Okay, from the government perspective, if mostly the countries have a long colonial system of education that has not been changed much, and that's why it is very much centrally controlled still, and schools do not have that much authority to practice their democratic choices, and also communities do not have that much access to education. So those are some administrative perspective of challenges. And about understanding, still people have negative beliefs regarding learner diversity and including them into the mainstream schools. And that is why, despite having a good policies, and also governments are pro-inclusive, yet both government people and also community people are not much positive about including all children into mainstream schools. So that is another attitudinal perspective of challenge. And from the geographic perspective, as I said, that the population size and also climate change issue is also sometimes creating some new challenges, and children who are in conflict zones, those things are also raised in many countries. Like Bangladesh is also facing a challenge with Rohingya people who came from Myanmar, our neighboring countries. Yeah. So those issues are contributing into the existing challenges, and also there are some socio perspective challenges. As I said, gender, and most countries are male dominated, and we have found that though global trends show that female teachers are more positive towards inclusion, but in many Asian countries like Bangladesh and other countries, females have positive attitudes, but they don't have that much positive high efficacy towards inclusion, because they don't have that much access to their decision making, and they do not have opportunity to be focused on different problem solving issues due to gender roles. Yes, so those are some issues that come from the socio perspective.
That's really interesting, and I suppose I'm drawing on your work in the journal again, but it's about it's about evidence, the evidence base for inclusion, and particularly in kind of global South countries, if you like, about how we measure inclusion and how does a national context know when they've reached that goal, or even at a smaller scale, how does a school know when they've reached that goal?
Okay. From my experience, what I can say is that the indicators has to be very much inclusive. As I also said before, that our understanding vary due to having a fragmented or segregated understanding of inclusion. If we want to mainstream the idea of inclusion, our indicators also have to be inclusive. So it has to be for all. And that is one thing. But what I can see is that in many countries, indicators of inclusion focus on different target groups sometimes. Sometimes they focus on only access to education. But if we analyze the work of May Linesco, and the definition he has mentioned, it has to be access, participation, achievement, and acceptance. All 4 dimensions has to be addressed. So indicators also have to be focused on those issues. And we had a number of work in Bangladesh. We worked with the government schools for 9 years. That was a very interesting program. It was supported by Australian aid and implemented by the Directorate of Primary Education with assistance from Plan International Bangladesh. And we worked in 50 government primary schools for 9 years. Wow. And we set indicators from the perspective of access, participation, achievement, and acceptance. Four dimensions. Those are school level indicators, actually. We set students' enrollment, accessible environment, attendance, active participation in issues, and also attitudinal issues and achievement issues in our indicators. So what we found is that when we applied a holistic approach of school improvement, it improved attendance, achievement, and participation of all children, irrespective of their diversity. So that is the important issue. When we set it in a holistic way, it improves the whole school system, includes the whole community into the school system. So and builds up in ownership of the school system. That is very important for sustainability also. And from the bigger system perspective, it has to be from the overall quality definition of a country, quality education definition of a country. So if we set indicators from those perspective, because we find that in many countries, people think that quality education is something else and inclusive education is another thing. But they don't they are not do two different things, actually. When you make education system quality one, it has to be inclusive, it has to be equitable. So if the quality education indicators cover all those issues, the idea of inclusion will be mainstreamed and sustained.
That's fascinating. And can I ask, relating to your 9-year study in the schools, did you find variability across schools? And I'd love to know, like, what impacted variability across those schools? Like, what factors influenced whether schools achieved that goal maybe sooner than other schools?
Okay. There were many factors that contributed in making schools inclusive, but our 9 years experience show that 3 or 4 are most significant indicators or influencing factors that are very much important. One is the teacher factor. If we can make quality teachers and also include their heart into the implementation approaches, especially they are changing their attitudes and beliefs and increasing their efficacy level, then it really changes the whole system. So that is one perspective, and that teacher perspective also includes head teacher's role. That means leadership issues of teachers. And we found that many head teachers were so much motivated. They changed the whole school system, as well as they spread those ideas into other schools. Right. And also local education authority. That is another important factor that we found in 9 years experience, especially education officers from the government side. Okay. If they are included from the very beginning of the initiation of inclusion program in their community, they contribute a lot. And we have several examples where one education officer changed the whole sub-district due to having exposed in only 5 schools initiative through our program. So those are some success stories of that 9-year journey. Yeah,
that's fascinating. Really, really good. Tariq, I'm finished like my questions to you, but have you got anything that you'd like to raise that you think would be important for the listeners of this podcast to hear about?
From my experience, what I can say is that working with the government is always very much challenging, that we found. And that's why regular advocacy is very important. What we did in last 15 years in Bangladesh, especially when the government started the journey of inclusion, and also creating evidences and models of inclusion for the government and also for others, because we have special education models, we have other mainstream models in our hand, but we don't have that much in good inclusion model in the world. So having some good models in front of us will be very easy way of showing the government as well as other parts of the world to let them know how it is being done or how it is being practiced. So that is another important area we have to consider. And also raising student voice, that is very much important. And last of all, teacher quality. The whole teacher education system has to be pro-inclusive in a country, so that it covers everything for making teachers inclusion friendly.
Yeah, at initial teacher education level and then professional development as well.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Can I ask, is there somewhere that people can find out a little bit more information about your work, or is there some way that they can contact you if they'd like to know more?
We have our website, Asian Center for Inclusive Education. We conduct regular international conferences.
Brilliant.
And we have had 5 conferences so far. The 6th one is coming next year in January. It will be open for and people. The paper call will open very soon. Within 1 week, we will start that, and through that conference they can be connected with us. And also we have our journal website. You can Google Asian Journal of Inclusive Education. You can find out all the issues of the journals, and this is the open access journal, so people can download all the papers. So through those platforms, they can be connected.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed chatting with you. Thanks a lot, Tariq.
My pleasure.